Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am particularly excited about today's episode because we've got an incredible guest joining us here today. Her name is Janet Bartoli. She's the founder of the Bartoli Consulting Group, the OG in SEO since 2004. Janet has led, built, and trained over 5,000 digital marketing teams, developers, and corporate organizations on SEO for brands like Fiat, Verizon, Bank of Montreal, and so many more. The BCG team now works with staffing and recruitment agencies to establish high-converting inbound marketing programs through a proprietary 4-part sprint-style framework developed by Janet through her experiences gained from working with some of the world's largest well-known brands. Now, for you listeners, every single entrepreneur and entrepreneur, I want to call something out. SEO is one of those things we don't talk about enough in the world of entrepreneurship, but it is time tested. I've built multiple businesses exclusively thanks to SEO. So Janet's work deeply resonates with me. It's going to change the game for you. It's something that's worked for a long time, and it will continue to work for a long time. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Janet Bartoli. All right, Janet, I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I'm glad to be here.
Heck yeah. Honestly, obviously, I teased it in the intro. I think we need to talk about SEO so much more than we do because there are all these sexy tactics about, building funnels and paid ads and all those other things. But walk us through your journey. How the heck did you get into SEO and what led you to here today?
Well, interestingly enough, I started out way back in around 2003, 2002, wanting to build websites for local small businesses at a time when the Yellow Pages was their friend. And so for those of you who don't know what the Yellow Pages are, it eventually became more of a doorstop, but it was a big, huge, thick book of Yellow Pages filled with ads from all kinds of local plumbers and your accountants and all of that. So it was at that time when the internet was really just starting to take hold. And I had explained to them before local SEO was a thing that they needed to be found for people who were looking for them. And so I really started at that point building these websites for these businesses, and then really taking an approach to how am I going to get these businesses found? So at the very early days, it was easy to get ranked for New Jersey accountant near me, even though people weren't even searching for a near me. So it was really the location plus the thing that you do. And so that's really where it started. And I thought it was so interesting and challenging to try and figure out not how to game the system, but how to be in compliance with the search engine and understand what is it you want, and then how do I do that on the other side to help my clients get some actual results.
Yeah, I love that you started with the yellow book analogy because I'm at least old enough to remember that. I do remember that as a kid. It was always dropped off at our house. And you're right. Nowadays, we're used to the digital version of that, which is search engines, of course. And I love, Janet, that your own story starts with small business websites because it's something that I think every listener will relate to. Pretty much every entrepreneur these days probably has a website, but that website is only as effective as its ability to get us traffic and eyeballs and the right people paying attention to us. So we hear the term SEO so often. I'm sure you hear it more than most people on planet Earth. What's your take on what is SEO today? Because I know it's changed so much over the past few decades. And where do we even start the conversation for business owners who want to say, yeah, I've not paid attention to SEO, but it's probably time for me to do that?
Well, it certainly has evolved. As everyone who's ever touched the search engine in the last 20 years, even your search behavior has evolved and changed. What you're searching for today is way different than what you searched for back in the early 2000s. You're not using Boolean searches or anything like that, but it's really, it's if you think about it in 3 different tiers, from an awareness perspective, your journey of researching a product or a service or something, then you are doing some brand evaluations, comparisons. If it's software, you're reading reviews. So the journey of search for any one individual, whether you're a consumer or a business owner, takes a different approach. Now, thinking from a business owner's perspective, you have to think about your digital marketing more broadly. And when you think about digital marketing, and in particular, when I'm speaking with staffing and recruiting agencies, they're very sales outbound focused. That's really their strength, and that's what they do well. But they've all mostly have forgotten that there's an inbound aspect to it, that people are actually searching for what it is you do. So help them. And when as I was talking about digital marketing in a more broad sense, you want to think about SEO as your foundation. So you might want to have paid search and paid social and other forms of digital in place, but basically you have to think about your growth as a business. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So start with your foundation, which is search engine optimization, and making sure that your website is searchable and indexable by Google at the very least.
Yeah, it's a really good place for us to start, because when you said to make sure that your website is searchable and indexable, Janet, you must smile as much as I do anytime you hear business owners say, yeah, my website is ranking. And when you ask them what it's ranking for and how they know that, they say their business name. So if you are Joe's Consulting Business and people search Joe's Consulting Business, cool, you show up. But that's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about ranking for things that end customers are searching for that don't include your business name, so that they don't know about you, but it's how it helps you, how it helps them know you. And I know that you work a lot in staffing and recruiting. Give us some examples there, because we're talking about beyond just your brand searchability. We're talking about getting discovered by new people. Walk us through that.
Absolutely. And when I have that conversation with them, one of the first things they say is, they don't have analytics set up. So that's the first thing we have to do is get an understanding of that. And oftentimes that you're absolutely right. They do just show up for their brand name. But as you know, if you are a very small to mid-sized business and you're based in Chicago, Illinois, and you think the entire country knows about you, they don't. Especially if you offer services outside of a geographic location, you need to be found for whatever it is your specialty is. So if we're talking about a staffing agency who specializes in healthcare staffing, or staffing for RNs or something related to that, is what you should be ranking for. And then it's not a matter of just ranking, but then once you get visibility for that, you've got to prove to them that you are the domain expert, that this is your specialty, this is what your firm does, and this is how you can help them. So ultimately, we want to tie those rankings, those visits, into some lead generation. So hopefully we've got events set up on your website, calls to action, whether it is, click to call to a salesperson or download something or a contact form, but some way to tie those visits into conversions. But as I said, at a basic level, we should be looking at tracking and measuring. And then from there, you can kind of see what is it that you're actually being found for.
Yeah, Janet, I love the way that you talk about this, because you really do position SEO as that foundation, but all your answers, they keep coming back to that healthy marketing mix, knowing what to do with that attention, knowing what to do with that web traffic. And I can't help but want to go deeper into the analytics side, because you're right, it's something that I definitely take for granted. My first business when I started in 2008 was a soccer blog, and our Google Analytics was the one tab that was always open in my browser. We lived and died by our page views, our user activity, how many ads we were displaying. That was what was important to us. But you're right, I forget that most small business owners don't even know what Google Analytics is. So talk to us a little bit more about analytics. What is it? Are we strictly talking Google Analytics here? What metrics are you paying attention to? How the heck does this stuff actually help small business owners?
We don't have to use just Google Analytics, although it is free and available to everyone. You can tie it into Google Search Console, which is another free platform that you should have linked up with your website. And in Google Search Console, it'll inform you in terms of the alerts. If the website is not accessible to Google, you'll get alerted that there are certain pages that may be blocked. So not just Google Analytics, but also Google Search Console, feeding you into that information into a single dashboard is great. I am really analytics platform agnostic. It doesn't matter as long as we're looking at where is the traffic coming in from, whether it's referral traffic from other sources online, is it coming in from social, whether it's LinkedIn or some other platforms, your email marketing campaigns. We need to see where that is. Oftentimes, I'll see maybe the majority of searches coming in through paid, maybe from social, but ultimately, it should come from organic search. The majority of your traffic should be coming in from organic search and from all over, particularly if you are a national brand or if you support a national audience. It should absolutely be less specific to a geographic region. But you should be looking at the data points, not as you said, Brian, not having it necessarily in a browser where you're refreshing and taking a look every 20 minutes, but at least have it as part of your weekly scorecard. And are you reaching or achieving those milestone points, those goals that you've set forth in terms of growth for your business?
Yeah, I love that big challenge that you just laid down for business owners everywhere is that organic needs to be one of your traffic sources, if not your top traffic source. Janet, listeners know this. My first business, the soccer blog, we grew to 3.5 million readers every single month, purely based on SEO. Now, granted, it was an easier game back in 2008. It's much different than it is in 2023. But talk to us about that, because listeners are going to be thinking, Janet, nobody's Googling and finding me. Where do I even start? And obviously there's a lot of ways that we can, and I'm sure we will take this conversation. We could talk on page, off page. Let's assume listeners have no idea what any of this stuff is. Where the heck do we even start when it comes to getting that organic traffic?
Well, start by the content that you are producing. If you're using LinkedIn, for example, as a platform, and yes, I think the most important thing is, let me just take a step back and talk about the year we're in, which is 2023. AI is in conversations, every other conversation. And the question then becomes, as it has been literally since I started back in 2004, is SEO dead? The answer is no, it's not dead. If anything, it's ever growing and ever changing. And that's part of the challenge of it. It does produce those quality visits that turn into revenue for your business. But if we want to understand where we start, we have to think about, what is the content? What do I need to help my readers or my listeners, if they're listening to your podcast or your YouTube channel, which, by the way, YouTube is your second most used search engine. So definitely leverage the content that you have there, and figure out, what are those questions people also ask, which when you Google something and you see people also ask these other questions, those are great ideas for pieces of content within your website. Having a full audit of your site from a technical but also a content standpoint will help identify what areas or gaps of opportunities that you have. Also a competitive analysis to see what your competition is doing that you're not doing. I know many business owners, myself included, we're very competitive and we want to know, what are they doing that we're not? And we can look at it in that way to see how are they doing from an organic search perspective, and then see where we can close that gap. And you're right, Brian, there's a myriad of ways we could kind of go in left field and right field. But all that to say is, I think the basic thing is just understanding what kind of content, besides content all about you and all about your business, but what is it that your prospective customers need help with? What are they asking? Or ask your sales team, what are the questions? And then start with a content strategy around that at the very least.
Yeah, I love that, Janet, because it's definitely advice that we've all heard along our entrepreneurial journeys. Content is king. It's a phrase that's thrown out there all the time, but so few people actually take it seriously. And the reason is because content is work. But you're right. I love the fact that you were the one that brought up AI here today, because if anything, AI is just assisting us in being able to execute on these jobs that we have when it comes to marketing, when it comes to SEO, when it comes to content creation. I want to talk about that content, because the thing that I love that you just just did at the end of your answer there is you called out most business websites are about them. It's not about serving the people who come to their website. And so content saying, hey, about Brian, here's who Brian is, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, cool. If someone's Googling me, if someone's Googling Brian, they're going to find answers to that. But what types of content? Are we talking about every business should have a blog? Are we talking about, you should have I don't know, audio content? What is it? The extent of the content that we should be creating?
Yeah. Well, again, you have to think about your prospective customer. If we're going to use, if I use the example of a recruitment firm that specializes in, let's say, technology, we might have, and you don't have to call it a blog. You can call it a knowledge center or a resource area, or what you can give it whatever name you want. But for all intents and purposes, it becomes this area of valuable, helpful information to assist your prospective customers to get to the next step. So if it is a resource center and you have an ultimate guide for a cybersecurity, somebody who just maybe graduated, they've got a cybersecurity degree, they want to understand what's the career pathing. If you'll also notice, again, if we're talking specifics around this industry, that being staffing or recruiting, Indeed has got a lot of content. They spent millions of dollars on building content up. And if you look at Robert Half or Korn Ferry or any of your biggest competitors, look at the kind of content that they have and see what sort of, you can see sort of a strategy or an approach to it, and more than the salary guides, like, please, no more salary guides. Everybody and their mother has one. But that's not necessarily what people need. What they need is an understanding of, here's where I'm at now. What's the next step? What is the next level or the next place that I should go into? Building the trust with them enough so that they can eventually reach out to schedule a call is really the best way to kind of do that. So I like to use the strategy of your biggest competitor. Take a look at the content, see the way that they've not only housed it, but where it sits in their website, and then read through it and see, is it really helpful? And can you produce something as helpful or better, which would be the ultimate thing?
Yeah, Janet, I really love what you did with that question, because first things first, obviously I went to the easy option, which is a blog, but you really flipped it. And I think for a lot of listeners who are saying, I don't want to manage a blog, it's important what you just said, because what you actually did is you said, consider the customer and their purchasing journey. And for me, what comes to mind is one tool that I use all the time, I'm a very loyal customer, is Loom. And so Loom, as far as I don't know if they have a blog or not, but it was a key part of my buying journey, because I inevitably, when I was deciding who to go with, I Googled Loom versus whatever the alternatives are. And they have content on their website that is Loom versus so-and-so. Here's the comparison. And they spell it out. That's not blog content per se, but it's strictly content that has to go along with, as you say it, getting someone to move along their buying journey. So I love that tangible example. I've seen it in real life. I think that is such a smart one, is so-and-so versus. If I'm a recruitment firm, Indeed versus myself. I mean, that would be really great content that people are actually Googling. That's the key part that I really like about your approach here. I want to ask you more about the off-page stuff, because obviously we can create content until the cows come home. But what we can't necessarily control, or I hope you're going to tell us that we actually can to an extent, is the off-page elements. Obviously, search engines are constantly looking at, how do we figure out which of these domains, which of these websites are good versus which ones are reputable, not so reputable? How the heck do we start looking favorable to the search engines when it comes to the off-page factors?
Well, one of the things that you should, I'll start with what you should not do. When you invariably, you'll get an email from somebody who is not really an experienced SEO professional, who will tell you they're going to get you hundreds of links every single month. That's the wrong way. And that is, in my professional opinion, it is not SEO. It worked, literally, it did work 20 years ago. It has not worked for the last at least 12 years. So that's not how you start. Yes, Google is still very much a link-based algorithm. So we do need to pay attention to those links that are coming into our website. but I would far be more interested in helping a client get 10 real good quality links to their website than 100. The quality links, and again, thinking more specifically about your industry, your brand, what is the easiest ones to start with are any relationships that you already have established with associations that you're involved with, or whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or an accounting association or whatever it is that you're affiliated with. Those are the easiest ones. Go there first. Also, any partners, joint venture partners that you work with, any resources, vendors, any of those people are the next level that I like to work with because it's easy. We work together. Would you mind putting, having a link on your resource page back to my website? That's the next easiest. After that, I like to look at it like, how can you build in content as a subject matter expert, building your branding, your authority, as that person who is a subject matter expert, onto another related type of a website. So for example, if I went to Entrepreneur Magazine and I wanted to write about how to build a business as a small business professional, and maybe I am a consultant for small businesses, that would be a nice relationship. There's relevancy there, and relevancy is the key. If I was going over to a do-it-yourself, build your own home and start writing an article over there or getting a link from them back to my small business website, there's no relationship and it's irrelevant. There's a story, it was back in 2010 or 2011, and it was BMW North America. And and JCPenney, both of these companies at the time, had just went to link farms and they said, hey, we heard links are really something we need. They went out, they contracted with some inexperienced link professional and had sourced all kinds of links into their website, completely irrelevant, like selling refrigerators, all kinds of stuff coming into BMW North America. And it to the point where Google delisted that website from its search engine. So it is an example. It's an unusual example, and it was a long time ago, but relevancy is still very key. And so if you take nothing away, and if you do nothing else, think through the relationship you have with other publishers and whether it makes sense to get those links into your website. One final tip is help a reporter out. It's called Haro, Haro. If you Google that, great place to get real good quality content written in to your website. Another really great resource is that.
Listeners, I'm going to call out for every single one of you right now. I can't stop smiling as Janet is answering these questions because she is giving you the recipe of how I built from 0 to 3.5 million visitors a month through SEO. These are literally, she's not holding back. These are literally the strategies. Janet, you called it out so clearly. Haro has been like my ace in the pocket for a long time. If you guys ever go to entrepreneurs' websites and you see that they say, featured in NBC, featured in Huffington Post, the easiest way to accomplish that is to reply to inquiries on Help a Reporter Out. Those outlets are asking for you to contribute. They will quote you in their articles and they will link back to you. So Janet, huge kudos for you giving that tip away to listeners. I love that advice. And I also want to call out and highlight that strategy you talked about, which is contribute to other websites. It's a really easy way. When I started my soccer blog, I was writing simultaneously on other soccer blogs, just asking for a link back. And I think the best SEO activities are the ones that, we benefit from an SEO perspective, but we're also at the same time getting in front of the right people. So it's also a an end in and of itself, not just a means to an end. So I love your advice there. Janet, the biggest knock that I hear on SEO, I'm sure you hear it a lot, is the timeline. A lot of people say, I'm not focusing on SEO because it's going to take 6 months to start getting results anyways, as if not doing it makes that timeline any quicker, by the way. But what is your response to that? To people saying, I just want to focus on something that brings results now. How long does it take to start seeing good things happen with these SEO types of activities and actions that we take?
Well, you can see, because I have gotten results. And again, it depends by the industry, the size of the brand. There's a host of different variables, of course. So I will never give a hard answer of, oh, it'll take 6 weeks or 6 months. It really just, I mean, I hate the answer, but it depends. Now, having said that, if you've not done anything today, it's going to take even longer. So if you started 6 months ago, you should be getting some results by now for sure. I have started blogs from scratch, websites with no domain history whatsoever, and I've gotten them ranked in less than 3 months. So it really just depends. What are you writing about? What are you associating your website with? How are you sharing it? You should be sharing it across social networks. Get people that are actually your potential audience that you'd like to speak with, get in front of them, share that information with them, and give them a reason to come back. So, as I said, the short answer is it depends. But the sooner you start, the sooner you'll see results. The other thing I would say is if you're in business for presumably a long time, then what's the hurry? This is how we build a business anyway. It's just a very strategic, methodical, step-by-step approach. So, trying to fast track your organic success, I don't know really how valuable that would be, except to maybe stress you out. So, and even if you started a podcast up or a YouTube channel up, that's still going to take some time. So just plan accordingly, get it started so that you can start seeing results.
Yeah, Janet, it's my favorite Chinese proverb. You just created the SEO equivalent of it. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. And I'm definitely biased, Janet, because I clearly love SEO. And it's to me, hearing you talk about it just seems so rooted in marketing reality, let's call it. You just make it seem, first of all, you make it seem fun because it's something that we can work towards. But most importantly, you make it seem like just an essential part of a healthy marketing blend. I want to hear your perspectives on that because it's not something I hear all the time from SEO experts, Janet. To me, it really makes your messaging stand out. And obviously, you've been in business for a long time. You are a business owner in and of yourself. So you understand the business side of operating, of growing, of long-term strategy. Talk to us about that marketing blend because it does sound like you have a healthy view of that.
What's interesting is when I started my SEO career way back by myself and then within a digital agency, it really didn't click in until I started working actually in-house for LexisNexis, but then really when I was at Accenture, because you're talking to very large corporate entities and their focus is revenue. How do I generate leads and sales? They were spending a ton of money on Accenture to get some support. And so oftentimes I'd be the only one on the team talking to them. But then I found that, really what I do from an organic search perspective does align up with the business goals and objectives. So instead of coming at them with, hey, I updated 25 title tags and I got you 35 links last week. Aren't you impressed? To which anybody, in any organization, especially at a C-level or above, that look, and if you have a board especially, they don't care about those things. Those are sort of, geeky SEO vanity type of metrics. What matters is how much traffic came in. Of that traffic, what percentage actually converted to what I deem to be a conversion, whether it's a call to my sales team or a lead. That's how I think all marketing should be looked at. Paid search always has had the advantage of an ROI. I put $5 in, I want to get $6 back out, or $1 in, $2 out, however you want to use that. But you should always be measuring your dollars. And whether it is paid search or paid social or organic search, there should be what is it that I'm getting on the other side of it from a revenue or a lead generation perspective. That's really what you should be measuring. And that's what we like to put sort of jobs or tasks on each of these different activities that we have within our digital marketing mix. They should all be responsible for sales and leads. So that is absolutely how everyone should be. If they're in business, you've got to think about marketing and sales working hand in hand in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings us back to that all most important metric, which is business growth. It's why we're doing anything and everything is to get those results that grow our business, further our impact. And Janet, I knew before we even got on today that we would go over time for sure. And I'm going to squeeze a couple of extra questions in here because I know that listeners are going to feel engaged. And hopefully this is the kick up their butt to say, holy cow, it's time to start taking action. The one thing I knew I had to ask you about today is your 4-part sprint style framework. I've got to ask you about that, how that works, because I'm sure it reveals a lot about your prioritization, the way that you operate. Give us some insights there.
Absolutely. So you start with every SEO campaign with a strategy. So you've got to have a strategy. You got to understand the business goals and objectives. It is absolutely pointless to try and get ranked for anything or even talk about links, especially before we have an actual strategy and a plan. So we start there. That's the first step. The second step is really doing a full comprehensive website quality audit. What is it that we're dealing with from a technical perspective? We know that page speed is a ranking algorithm factor, so we've got to do some analysis on how is the website accessible to the search engine? So do I have any technical crawling related issues? Do I have any broken links? Let's clean that up. And then content, looking at the content audit aspect of things. Content is a huge component, especially if you're a small business. Content is like the lifeblood of your website and ties into your brand. So making sure that there is a content analysis done, an opportunity and a gap analysis, and looking at from a competitive perspective, developing a content strategy, and then moving into digital PR. Digital PR is what we were talking about offsite. If you do have a YouTube channel, how are we taking those two different platforms and merging them in so that there's a comprehensive, cohesive message also across all your social channels? Then we're looking at finally the fourth is now we've got all that traffic coming into the website. We've got to make sure that it's actually converting. So conversion rate optimization is sort of the fourth pillar or the fourth tier that really kind of like ties it all up in a nice bow to make sure that we get the traffic in, we're getting it converting. And now that is sort of like our 4-part framework. And it can take a considerable time. I don't try and jam it all in 3 months, but we work through in sprints to work through each one of those different milestones, so those different tiers.
Yes, Janet, I love that overview. Listeners, do you see why we were so excited to invite Janet on the show here today? This is the level of transparency that I'm going to call out because a lot of you may not have dipped your toes into the SEO world just yet. Janet is a very rare breed of transparency in the SEO industry. So Janet, I love these insights. I want to squeeze in 2 more questions with you before we call it a day here. The first is something that you brought up a little earlier in our session today, which is the claim that you and I have both been hearing for decades now that SEO is dead. I've heard it about SEO. I've heard it about email marketing. And in my opinion, those are 2 things that are not dying anytime soon. Talk to us about why people say that. Where the heck does that claim come from that SEO is dead? And also lumped in with that, what is the direction? Because obviously it's not dead. It's always changing. What is the direction that you see SEO going in?
Well, I'll start with why people have been thinking it's dead since literally the early 2000s. Because as Google specifically, and let's say I think it's like 87% of the world population is using Google. Okay, so that's why when I'm referencing the search engine, I'm talking about Google. There's only about 6 or 7% of the population that's using Bing. But let's look at it from the search engine we all use, which is Google. Google has made lots of changes over the years. With many, if you followed anything that Google's been doing, they've had a Panda update and a Penguin update. They've had a helpful content update. They've focused on mobile and voice search and AI. And AI, well before last year, certainly it's been at least a number 6 or 7 years ago. It's really been used within its algorithm. So anytime a major algorithmic shift happens, people then start to assume, SEO must be dead. There's a lot of paid search, so that must mean that SEO is dead. It's not. It's just the changing face of the search engine and how it's been improving and learning over time. Now, here we are in 2023. What do we do now? We know that there are even more changes. If you're not familiar with Google Google Search Generative Experience, SGE, actually has a beta platform, which I am a beta tester for. So I am now able to start seeing how Google is going to be answering certain questions or providing certain results. One of the things that we do see other SEOs in the industry have been talking about is forget top of funnel. Forget answering any basic question. How to, you're going to get a search generative experience answer just like you do with ChatGPT. So you've got to think more of a level deeper. As a subject matter expert or as someone with that topical authority, how can you answer the question so that someone doesn't need to go back to the search engine and go find another answer because yours wasn't satisfying enough? Make sure that you're providing that a full breadth of definition of what it is that that person is looking for, providing your experience and integrating your experience into the content is going to be far better once Google does roll out its next changes with SGE. So a lot more to come. We still don't know it at all, but we have some insight into how Google is changing things up. It'll be exciting to see. And by the way, definitely SEO is not dead. It's going to be even more important, but more difficult, more challenging. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah, very valuable insights there. Listeners, myself included, we would have no way of knowing this type of shifts that are going to be coming without the insights of someone like Janet, who's got her finger on the pulse and is actually involved in beta testing, getting an early glimpse into where this stuff is going. So Janet, thank you so much for sharing that with us. My last question, I did say I wanted to squeeze two more in, and I love the way you answered that one. My last one is, we obviously talked about so many things here today. We talked about content. We talked about the actual keywords that people are searching. We talked about the role of AI. We talked about digital PR. I love that you shared real life strategies with regards to that. Where the heck do you think listeners should start? So obviously they've tuned into us here today. They want to take action. I know that. I can feel it because of how much heat you brought to today's episode. What's something that you think they should do, sit down, an action that they can take, or a strategy they can put in place to start finally ranking in Google?
You know, one of my favorite places, a lot of times people will ask me, where do I start to learn? And I think rather than telling you to go find somebody and get a content audit, to look at your website and see what it's doing, because as a business owner, we should be dealing with our clients. And so I don't ever recommend somebody go get a Ahrefs or a SEMrush account and just start figuring things out. That's not what you should be doing day to day. But what I would suggest is be familiar with SEO and what it is today. You can do that in a variety of different ways. You can Google search. Google has its own guide, and Brian, I'll give you a link to that guide also, just so you can put it in the show notes. But the other thing is Moz. If you go to Moz.com, they actually do have a beginner's guide in SEO. And again, I don't expect anybody to become an expert, but be familiar with it and be familiar with what the necessary components are to make sure that your website is actually index searchable and indexable. So those are the things that I would say is just get a basic understanding, learn, be familiar with it, and the changes that are going to be coming about. And then maybe the third and final thing of that would be find an expert, find somebody who can actually guide you in the right way. And they are likely not people who are charging less than $100,000 a month, because it's one of those, you get what you pay for. I have spoken to way too many business owners who have felt like they throw money away because they've worked with the wrong kind of freelancer or the wrong person who doesn't really know. And certainly feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to. If I can't help you, I will point you into the right direction of where you can actually get that help for sure.
Yeah, Janet, I love those insights and actions. And it's so funny for me to hear you talk about Moz, because that's truly what got me started in my path. They've obviously been in the game for such a long time. Rand Fishkin is someone who I followed his work for so long. And I love that free resource is out there for everybody, as well as the resources that Google themselves provide. Let's face it, I think too many people forget that at the end of the day, Google wants us business owners to succeed at SEO because they want the right results for their users. They want, when we search something on Google, we find what we're looking for. They want to set us up for success. So listeners, I'm going to say it once again, because Janet is way too humble to say it about herself, but she is incredibly transparent, a level of transparency you're not going to find within the SEO world. The fact that she's sharing these resources with us, obviously check the show notes out for those. I think that longevity is something we don't celebrate enough in the world of entrepreneurship. But Janet, you've been in business for a long time. You're going to continue to be in business for a long time because you're incredible at what you do. And you're such a breath of fresh air in this field. So I know that listeners are going to be eager to find more about you, your company, all the awesome work that you're doing. Drop those links on us. Where should listeners go to get in touch with you?
Well, thank you so much, Brian. That was nice. Certainly you can go to LinkedIn and find me there. I am there posting every day, talking, having conversations. I have a newsletter every single month that goes out. Also, you can go to mycandidatepipeline.com. All things inbound marketing related. Yes, there are things specific to staffing and recruiting, but even you can apply those inbound marketing different aspects or learnings for your own business. And we're launching a new podcast, Candidate Pipeline. It's going to go out on September 1st. And so, as I said, I share everything inside of LinkedIn. So, if you want to connect with me there or have a one-off conversation, I'm happy to do that and share all of my resources.
Yes, listeners, you all know the drill. Check out the show notes wherever it is that you're tuning in to today's episode, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, scroll right on down and you'll find so many good links that Janet just dropped on us here today, including a link to her personal LinkedIn. It's actually how we came across her work and invited her to come on the show. She is not kidding when she says that she pumps out incredible content. Again, I'm just going to say it one final time, so transparently, so generously that you're not going to see elsewhere. So definitely even just drop Janet a line on LinkedIn to thank her for coming on the show today. So Janet, you've been a wealth of knowledge. This is so refreshing. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks so much, Brian.